So thank you all for joining our special TL Insider Masterclass with Chef Craig Harding. Thank you, Chef, for joining us tonight. Now, I hope you all received, yes, thank you so much for your time. I hope you all received your kits and you received Irene's email earlier this afternoon with some quick prep notes, and that you all have your kits ready to go. So on tonight's menu is the beetroot tartare with home baked focaccia, ricotta gnocchi, pan roasted duck breast, and chocolate almond torta. So some quick housekeeping notes before we get started with the class. Please make sure to keep your mics off unless you have a question for Chef as you follow along the class. So we encourage you to turn your mics on if you do have questions. And I'm sure Chef will be happy to answer your questions along the way. So now I'd like to introduce Chef Craig Harding. Thank you again for your time, and please take it away.
Thank you for having me. Always been a big fan of Toronto Life, so it's an honor to be part of this cool, unique kind of behind the scenes look at what we do in a little master class, cooking class. I really enjoy, doing these things because I don't often get the chance to connect with people on such an intimate level and share time. So this is one of the very cool things that has sort of come out of the pandemic, is the opportunity to share these virtual moments with you. And I'm excited to give you a bit of an insight into, how I put a meal together. This is definitely sort of, restaurant food, but I'm obviously here at home, so it translates well in that way. And I'm going to talk about the food that we're preparing tonight, and I hope to give you some tips just quickly.
Oh, what happened to the volume now?
Okay.
Results were Sue.
So yeah, if for the most part everybody can sort of stay on mute until they have a question, that would be just a little bit easier for us to all understand and hear me. So we've got this beautiful meal with with Constantine influence. That means it's got the Italian roots, but also it's kind of what I wanted to do with this restaurant, which was take it from basically the east to the west. So flavors of Italy, flavors of Spain, but then also into the Middle East. So we're gonna get a lot of unique flavors. Maybe some things that you guys haven't seen, like sumac, and maybe you haven't worked with duck or ever cooked duck. But I promise you, I'm gonna make it easy, and I'm gonna walk you through every step. That being said, feel free to ask me questions, but also if I'm jumping ahead and you have a question about, say, what I did the last step or two, you can easily chime in and we can kind of work backwards and take it back and slow down a little bit. So I get really excited, so I will try to keep things at a nice pace so everyone can work along with me. I'm going to go through all of the mise en place items that we have here, as in all of these little ingredients, what they're for and what they correspond to. But in the meantime, I want to quickly go over what I have set up to essentially execute this in a timely way. And that's one of the secrets about running a kitchen, is that we're always ready. Our water's always boiling, our ovens are always hot, and tonight we're going to try to make this meal and serve it sort of at the same time. So we're going to cook each dish, but we're going to hold it and prepare it in a way so that at the end of this we can all sit down and enjoy it together. I have my oven on right here to 450. We are going to bake our focaccia. It's going to take about 25 minutes, so that's something that might go in very, very early. We also have the beetroot tartare, and we're going to get that going probably right off the top because it's going to get better when it sits in its bowl and when it marinates. So I have my beets in a bowl. So get yourself a little salad bowl. This isn't a serving bowl. This is more of what we're going to mix it in. So make sure you've got that ready to go. My duck breast. Okay. I opened them in the package and I just laid them out skin side down on a paper towel. So if you have them in front of you, maybe cut the bag open, put them on a paper towel, wash your hands. I have a couple of cutting boards, and the reason I have two is for that very reason. I have duck. We're going to need to do a little bit of scoring and trimming on the duck breast. So I have one board for that. I have another board to cut the rest of my produce and veg and things like that. So we don't want to cross-contaminate here. So make sure you get two cutting boards. And if you don't, that's fine. We can cut the duck and wash and go proceed that way. Totally fine. On my stove here, and when I get into this area, I will bring the camera a little closer so you can kind of see what's happening in my pot. But I've got a pot of boiling water on. I have two pans. One's going to be for searing my duck breast, and the other one will be for building my ricotta gnocchi with brown butter. This pasta is so easy. And I love it because yes, it's ricotta gnocchi. Yes, we've made it at the restaurant, but the sauce itself can translate into really into anything. You can even go to your favorite store and buy frozen raviolis, or you can put like you know, a short noodle, even with penne or something like that. So it's all about building this sauce and kind of working with that flavor, but it can be substituted for a lot of other different noodle shapes and noodle styles as well. So we can talk about that when I get into it. I also have a tiny little saucepan for our duck choux. So again, you know, if you're missing stuff on your station or in your kitchen, it's okay. We're gonna go through everything, and I imagine you'll be able to catch up, and maybe you have a sous chef in there. I'm working alone, maybe there's two of you, so who knows, you might be a little bit further ahead than I think. So let's go through the ingredients that I have in front of me. I pulled out my kit and I opened it and I put everything in front of me, and it's labeled, so that's really convenient. For now, I'm gonna take the chocolate torte and I'm gonna put it off to the side. What goes with that is the creme anglaise and the almonds. Okay, so set that aside here. The toasted almonds and the creme anglaise, okay? The creme anglaise, I'm just gonna chill in the fridge. And like I said, my duck breast is open and my beets are gonna be the first thing that I gotta get going with. So what do we put in a beet tartare? The idea behind this is that it's mimicking the flavors that you traditionally find in, say, a steak tartare or a lamb tartare, which is, you know, the gherkins, the mustard, hearty winter flavors. Now, these are somewhat traditional, but again, tartare is open for, you know, you could have a tuna tartare with totally different flavors. But this is sort of, when you think of that classic sort of red meat tartare, this is the flavor profile. And I think it translates really, really well into roasted beets. All we did for these was literally roast them in foil with olive oil, garlic, fresh herbs in the skins. It's covered in foil until they were super soft, and then we just peeled them, and so they're virtually, you know, ready to be. It's a blank palette. We can add whatever flavors you want to it. And I love roasted beets. They're kind of sweet. They've got that earthiness. And what we're going to put in here is grainy mustard, gherkins, which are these delicious tiny little pickles on the sour side. We have some capers, always classic in a tartare. We have, to garnish that, we have toasted pine nuts, and we have fried rosemary. That's gonna go on at the very end. And then we have Maldon salt, olive oil, sumac. You can see there's a lot of ingredients. This is kind of taking up most of this prep, or this mise en place, if you will. So the sumac, which is a super tangy, it's essentially a dried berry. So we have sumac bushes here, which you see all over the place in Ontario, but this is the kind of sort of Middle Eastern sumac that's a little bit more pungent, a little bit stronger. And when it's dried, it holds on to that sour tanginess. So it's gonna give it a really nice, interesting component here. And then we've got some beautiful oregano, which we're gonna chop in there as well. So that is our tartare. Now, for our pasta, we obviously have the beautiful ricotta gnocchi here. So that is frozen. It's okay to pull it out and keep it out. It's not going to be a problem. That can just sort of hang out on the back here until we get to it. What else goes with that dish? Well, squash puree. This is just essentially a roasted butternut squash puree, very clean, very simple, a little bit of salt, a little bit of butter in a Vitamix, so it gets it perfectly smooth. It's going to go on the bottom, essentially to catch some of that brown butter and that sage. To garnish that dish, we have another container that says squash. So that is basically some of the nice, we've roasted squash, and we used a little melon baller to get these cool little round shapes. So that will be the garnish, okay, for that gnocchi. So we have butter, we have, yeah, no, you don't need the melon, it's already done. But the melon baller is how we achieve that little round shape. It's a little kind of chef tip, right? Roasted veg and then melon balled, really, really interesting. Or even raw veg. If you just have a raw squash and you get your melon baller going, it makes a cool, like a perfect little garnish for it. It could be for anything really. So we have, for the gnocchi, sage, the melon balled squash, the squash puree, some butter, obviously butter and pasta, and we have an olive oil here. So we're going to use a little bit of olive oil for the beets and a little bit of olive oil for the pasta. So without further ado, let's get into this tartare. Okay, I'm going to take my beets and I'm going to put them over here on my cutting board. And I've got myself a sharp knife. And what I want to do is I want to cut these into even little diced cubes, because that to me is what a tartare is. When you cut something in a perfect cube in a nice size, it's sort of with the color and the shape, it actually almost plays a little trick on you because it's going to mimic like a beef tartare, but it's actually completely vegan. All right. So we've done most of the work for you. And I know, listen, you're going to get yourself a little maybe stained, but that's just part of the, sometimes cooking can be a dirty, job, but that's why we stay close to the dish area here, the sink, and we wash up on a regular basis. That's the one thing about working in the kitchen for so many years. I have, especially in the winter, my hands are so dry because I'm just washing them constantly. It's like you touch something, you wash it. You touch something, you wash it. So I always try to stay hydrated and keep myself rubbed in coconut oil and olive oil. Okay, so how do we cut a nice dice? So I take the beet and I make nice even slices all the way along, and then I turn them on their side so that I can then cut them again into strips. So once I go from rings into strips, and then I turn it again a third time, okay, to then get that even dice. So in in the classic sort of French like description of how we would be referring to these ingredients, this would be, some might call this a brunoise, some might call this a small dice, but everything in the professional kitchen is sort of referred to in the French sense, whether it's the positions of hierarchy among the staff and the cooks, or sometimes the ingredients or the techniques. They were the first to kind of modernize cooking and set some standards, so we still use that today. So everybody, you might see a bit of a like a root piece. Just trim that off. Sometimes we get so obsessed with having perfect slices, perfect dices, perfect cuts that I've seen this happen before, and I hate it, that we waste product because it's like, it just doesn't fit the mold here. And while of course we want this all to be cut perfectly, this is at home, it's okay, cut it as best as you can. And it's our job as chefs to attempt to get the perfect mise en place for all of our dishes. And then the things that don't make, like the pieces of ingredients that do not make the trim pieces or whatever, that don't make the cut, we always find a use for them. So they have to have a secondary use, such as a veg stock. So you'll find the cooks coming in to get ready for a busy dinner service, basically breaking down romaine and onions, and they'll peel away maybe an extra few layers of onion skin just to get to the hearts. But then we always find a use for it. We make stocks with it. They go into our soups. So it's a really it's a really interesting approach that we take in order to get that perfect looking food to the plate every day. It requires us to be a little bit fanatical on how we approach the dishes and how we teach things. But again, food security is obviously a big concern for us. So we definitely don't want to waste a morsel of food, especially tonight at home. So I'm dicing up my beets. And now if anybody wants to chime in and ask a question while we're doing this, like just to maybe even, set up something that maybe they have a question about the next dish coming, or are they ready or whatever, please feel free. I'm happy to have open discussions or dialogue with you guys. Otherwise I would just keep dicing up my beets here.
Yeah.
Yes.
If we wanted to barbecue the duck, should we turn our barbecue? Is that something that works? And should we turn our barbecue on now?
I would say it's possible, but I would recommend against it. And I'll tell you why. The duck breast skin, the best part of the duck breast, something that has to be rendered and crisped perfectly, also has so much fat, it's going to flare and burn like crazy. So is there an opportunity or a way for you guys to do it in your home on a pan at this point? Because that's really, to me, the best way to cook this product.
Do you want it cooked in the pan, or do you want it cooked in the oven on a wire mesh?
So I would cook it in a pan. I would cook it in a pan on the stove, and then just finished in the oven for ever so in that same pan for literally 5 minutes. That's how I would cook it. Okay, so get yourself a pan if you can,
Chef,
and we can kind of cook it. Yes.
We only have one duck breast, so should we cut it into two, or should we only have one?
You should only have one, because again, this is a 14 to 16 ounce duck breast, so it's quite large and it's quite rich. So yeah, we're gonna cook it all together, and then we're gonna slice them into slices, and we'll split them between 2 plates. Does that make sense?
Perfect. Yep, okay. Totally.
Okay, great. So I'm almost done with my beets here.
So,
One last little piece. And yeah, if you have another question, please.
Chef, do you recommend a cast iron frying pan?
I mean, that would be my, like a nice heavy bottom cast iron would be my preference. Yes, for sure.
Thank you.
I'm going to use a heavy stainless steel pan. Okay, so I'm just giving myself a quick wash up here. And we are going to grab a tablespoon or any kind of mixing spoon, and we're going to get into how we dress this tartare here. I'm going to see if I can make myself a little. No, I can't seem to make myself the full screen. So first things first, olive oil, salt, okay? We have a lot of olive oil here, right? This massive container. I'm going to put just a tablespoon in there, okay? Just like 1 tablespoon. I'm going to save the rest for my pasta. Now, let's start with some Maldon sea salt. I love Maldon salt. It's chunky, you know, it's flaky. It has a gentle, salty taste, but it has a crunchy, beautiful texture, which I love. So I'm going to use my fingers, and I'm going to use just the 2 fingers, and I'm going to put 1 pinch and 2 pinches, because again, there's other salty things in here. Capers are salty. You know, even the mustard's a bit salty, and we can always add. If we overdo it, you can never take it away. So we're always, as a chef, you'll always find me, I'm always adding a little bit of salt, tasting it, adding a little more salt. So it's not like you hit it all at once. And I also want to save a little bit of this Maldon for the duck breast when it's finished. This is what we would call a finishing salt. And the other salt that I use, and I'll show you, is kosher salt. Now, if you have other regular salt at home, this is totally fine, but chefs like to use that sort of flaky kosher salt because again, it has the texture between your fingers. It's easy to grab. It's easy to, you know, visually see on the product. Like sometimes when the salt is really, really fine, like iodized salt, and you put it on, it's really hard to know, oh my God, how much have I seasoned that? And as chefs, we're very visual. We like to see how much. You know, we can almost cook without even tasting because it's just second nature. We just visually know this much butter, this much salt. And we've done it so many times. So now I have my olive oil and my salt in here. What's next? I have some capers. I'm going to put not quite all of these. I'm just going to put maybe 2/3 of what I have. And because again, we can always add more, right? Sumac. Again, I'm going to take 1 pinch of sumac. Maybe 2 pinches. I have about 4 to 5 pinches in my little ramekin here, but I just want to make sure we're tasting it before we get too far ahead of ourselves. Gherkins. How many gherkins did I have? I have 5 or 6 gherkins. I'm going to pull out 1. I'm going to pull out 2, 3. I'm going to pull out 4 gherkins and leave 3 inside. Now these gherkins, I want to dice them a stitch smaller than the beet. Because again, they're powerful, right? They're pungent. So these are like a nice sour and sweet blend of
Hi guys.
Pardon, I have a question. Hi.
Are we supposed to have capers with us?
There should be capers in there.
No. Okay.
No capers. Apologies. What are the chances you have them in your fridge drawer? Or your fridge door.
We're gonna go look what we have possibly.
And no sumac.
And we don't have sumac either.
I have it at home, but not here now.
Okay. Yeah, apologies on that. If you don't have the sumac, it's totally fine. Maybe just some fresh pepper. I think fresh pepper is a nice little touch too. So I'm dicing up my gherkins nice and small, which is just slicing. And again, it's sort of like I slice down, then I turn it on its side, slice the slices into strips, and then rotate them towards me. And then I have all the strips lined up. And then this is kind of how we make nice even dices, like a nice even dice rather of the ingredient. All right. So we add my first bit into my bowl. And now I have 2 more gherkins to do the exact same thing too. And again, this is, you know, if you don't get the slicing technique perfect, it's totally fine. Sometimes you could just take your knife and run it like this, hache back and forth. It's totally acceptable. Okay, so we have capers in there, gherkins, salt and olive oil and sumac. I don't think I have any pans on right now, but my water's boiling. So make sure at this point, I know I said have the water on simmer, but I'd probably turn it up to more of a normal boil. Okay. So the method, or not the method, but the timeline for this dinner is we're gonna finish this tartare off. We're gonna add next the grainy mustard. And once we finish the tartare off, we're then gonna start the duck breast, okay? And we're gonna have, sorry guys, okay, got a call. That's the one drawback of Zoom is it does not block out calls. So I have grainy mustard. Again, there's a little bit, this is a lot of mustard. I'm gonna use just half of this mustard, okay, into the bowl before I mix that around. And then I have pine nuts and fried rosemary. That'll be for the garnish on the top. I have a little bit of oregano here. Sorry, one other call coming in. I'm going to chop just a few pieces of my oregano. See, not too much. Oregano, fresh oregano is very, very powerful here. So I'm just going to slice and dice, give that a nice chop. I'm going to add that in. And then the things that I'm going to save for the top of it are the fried rosemary and the pine nuts. So now that we mix this around, all we really want to do now is taste for our seasoning. Make sure we have enough salt in there. Okay. That's great. A little bit of oregano comes through. The grainy mustard's there. You know, touch of sumac. If you want fresh cracked pepper, put a little fresh cracked pepper in. But anyways, that's ready to just sit and hang out while, oh, I hear you found the seasoning. Okay. See, sometimes it's hiding. I know there's so many pieces everywhere. So just keep looking and I'm sure you're going to find whatever it is you were missing. So now what do we need to do? I'm going to turn on my pans here. So I have two pans. I have two pans on. So the thing with the duck breast is it works really well in a nonstick, a cast iron, or a also what I'm using is a stainless steel pan, like this, nice thick stainless steel pan. But because I have cabbage and potatoes, I want to give those a nice sear in a pan. And if I sear the cabbage and the potatoes in here, they're going to stick. So if you have a cast iron or a non-stick, I would use it for this first phase, which is taking the pave, which is this thing here is a pave. And what is a pave? A pave is essentially a potato gratin, which we have done, and we've added a little bit of extra character to it by adding Jerusalem artichoke or sunchoke layered between the potatoes. So it's very simple, a little bit of cream, a little bit of butter, and we've layered these potatoes, baked it till it's soft, and pressed it. Once it's chilled overnight, we take slices and we're going to fry them in olive oil and warm them in the oven. So things to think about. The timing of this is right now. We're gonna sear the cabbage and the potatoes. We're gonna put them on a baking sheet, and then that baking sheet is gonna go in the oven. While that's in the oven, the focaccia is gonna go in as well. So I want everybody to grab the focaccia, take the lid off, and we're gonna put a little bit of Maldon on there, okay? So we're gonna take a pinch of Maldon, and we're gonna put a little bit of that on there. And I want everybody to take that and put that in the oven. And because I'm on my phone, I can't set a timer. So maybe someone at home could set a timer for 20, let's say 25 minutes, and then let me know when that goes off, and then we're gonna check it. But I'm gonna keep an eye on it as well. So 450, top shelf, I'm gonna fire in the focaccia. For now, so now I have my nonstick. And my nonstick is going to be for this beautiful cabbage. So these are tiny baby Savoy cabbages, and they have been cooked in buttermilk and sumac and za'atar in a sous vide bag. Okay, so what sous vide is cooked in a vacuum seal underwater so that they get perfectly soft, but they don't get overcooked. There's still a bit of texture. And what's gonna perfectly kind of take these to that next level is a nice brown crusty sear with olive oil and finishing that in the oven. So again, we have a little bit of olive oil left. I don't want to put too much, so I'm just going to put a splash in there and save a little bit for my for my gnocchi. And then when I feel like my pan is sufficiently hot, again, this is not something you want to rush. Get your pan hot, because when we're searing things in a restaurant, if you put something into a cold pan, the likelihood of it sticking is very, very great.
Hey, Craig,
So
I need to interrupt you. Could you please
Yes.
go over what I should be doing with the focaccia?
Yeah, so I took the lid off.
Okay.
And I grabbed my salt, I grabbed my flaky sea salt, and I
Yes.
put a little pinch on it. I put
Okay.
a small pinch on it, and I put it in my oven at 450.
In the same
that's gonna
foil?
be-
In the same foil?
Yeah, in the foil, in the foil.
Okay,
Exactly.
thank you. For 25 minutes?
Yeah, I think someone set a timer, but we're gonna be in and out of the oven.
Okay,
So it's perfect for us to check on.
okay. And
So I'm going.
yeah.
So now it's time to sear the pave. And the pave is here. You see these beautiful layers? I'm gonna put the top side down. Really, any side down, it doesn't really matter. And then I'm gonna take my cabbage and we're gonna add that in there as well. So like I said, non-stick or cast iron for these, because they do have a tendency to want to stick, okay? So I'm back to my washing up station here. And in the meantime, I have a second pan on for my duck. So I want the second pan to be on a low, I want it to be on a medium heat. And we're gonna preheat this pan, because how you cook the duck is, the duck goes into a warm pan. So this is one of the rare instances where you don't want a super hot pan to sear. Like if I was cooking a steak, it would be in a super hot pan to get a nice crust. But what I wanna do is I wanna render this skin. So the skin needs to, yes, please do.
For the pave, should it like sizzle when we put it in the pan, or should it just?
No, it should be sizzling. Yeah, that should be sizzling along with the cabbage. And if it's not sizzling, then you know what? Get your heat up a bit until you reach that sizzle. And then once you reach it, maybe just throttle it back down. So that's the thing about improving your cooking game at home, is being aware of the temperature of pans. Not too hot, not too, like being able to kind of go up and down with it a little bit, as to, have that sense of it. Like, oh, is this too low? Is it, is it cooking quick enough? Like, it's interesting. Like everything's a bit different. Like you'll see when we cook pasta, we almost go a little quickly because we want hot sizzle. We want browning butter. We want like that. We don't want to, especially with gnocchi, when it comes out, you almost want to move quickly with it, right? But something like duck breast, it goes a little bit slower, right? And then with these pave as well, once it sizzles, that's the heat you want, but you don't want it to keep going to like burning. So the sizzle happens and you turn it down. It's kind of like it's a constant tweak. So back to my duck. Yes.
Hi, just a quick question for the duck. It looks like you've got it sliced kind of in the middle. So should one half of it be?
No, these are two. These are two breasts. So, yeah. Sorry, I just keep getting well. So yeah, so you see I have them in two. There's two breasts here, but I'm only gonna cook one. Okay.
Gotcha.
So we're just, you know what? It's probably a little confusing. I'm just gonna get it out of the way. So one duck breast. So what we do, can you guys all see this? I'm just gonna check on my pave here because I feel like it's ready for the oven. So I'm gonna get myself a tray to bake with. Okay, so just a little baking sheet here. And I'm going to get myself my spatula. Where did I put it? Over here. And I'm just going to transfer this to a baking sheet now that I browned it. Okay, so everybody can see, has a nice gold. Once you get a golden brown top, we transfer it over, just like that. Really simple. And that's where the non-stick really comes in handy. Okay, and now I take the cabbage as well, and I flip it over on the brown side, just like that. Now this pan that I use for this is going to be also my gnocchi pan. So I'm gonna put it back on here and turn it off the heat for a second. Okay, and then we can take this, and this can go into the oven with the focaccia. This is gonna take another 20 minutes as well, Okay, so we're gonna throw that in there, just like so. Okay, so now, like I said, it's time to continue with the duck breast, but I wanna have a pan on very low heat here, okay, for the duck. I'll bring it to the front, and I will adjust the camera angle so you can kind of see how I base this. But like I said earlier, I really want to crisp up the skin. So we have to score it. And by score it, I mean take a few slices in order to help render the fat out. So I am running on the diagonal. If my duck breast is up and down, I'm running it on the diagonal because I want to make a nice crosshatch diamond shape. So I take a knife, and the goal is to just put the tip of the knife in, make an incision without going into the flesh. I know this is a really intimate way to be speaking about the product like this, but you just want to score that skin and not cut into the actual breast itself. So if you can see, I can show you here, I've got these concentric lines that are just about, I don't know, even a fraction, like a quarter of an inch into the skin. So I'm going to do them a quarter of an inch deep and a quarter of an inch apart. So I'm scoring it all the way down to the bottom. And then what do? I turn the duck breast the other way, and I score it in the same fashion. And I'll show you this up close and personal so you can see what I mean, to create this diamond crosshatch. Okay. So I hope that that's easy for you to see. And again, if this doesn't turn out perfectly, that's quite all right. It is totally, totally fine. So if everybody looks and flips over the skin side, once they score it, you're gonna see a little flap. That's the tender. You're gonna pull the tender off, and that we're gonna cook separately because it's always gonna wanna come off. So now I have a duck breast, skin side scored and the back side. I'm gonna cook this on the skin side, but I wanna season it. So if you guys have a little bit of salt at home, like I do, I have a little container of salt. I am going to sprinkle the skin with salt. I use kosher, but whatever works, sea salt, table salt, anything is fine. Okay, so I'm gonna season both sides, and I'm gonna put it in my pan that's just like lightly warmed with nothing. There's no oil, because I want that skin to render, and that skin will produce all the beautiful oil and fat that we need to cook this thing amazingly. So everybody focus on that and getting their duck in, and I'm gonna recap where we're at here, okay? I'm just gonna wash my hands.
How easily should the tender part come off of the duck breast?
It should come off very easily. It's like a chicken tender. It's the same thing, right? It's essentially the same makeup as a chicken breast. It's like, think of it as a chicken tender. It should come right off. And if it doesn't, it's okay, because when you cook it, it's gonna come off anyways. So if you're a little unsure of where it is, you don't wanna rip it, that's fine. Put it in the pan, we're gonna cook it, and when I start basting it, it's gonna come off. So I think now it's time for me to get a little closer here. Okay.
Put our cabbage in?
The cabbage went in the oven with the potato. So what I did was I seared the cabbage and I seared the potato, put it on a tray, and I put that in the oven with the focaccia. So I should have focaccia in the oven with a crispy seared potato and cabbage as a garnish for the duck. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so here I have my duck, and I have so much fat coming off of it right now, which is amazing. And I want to get a spoon, something a little bit bigger, okay? Like not a tablespoon, but almost like a salad serving spoon, because I'm going to baste. And by basting, we're achieving the the fat is going to cook and create a convection of heat in the pan. And like I said, we're going to finish this in the oven, but we're going to get it to a very good point in the pan. And like there's so much rendering of oil that comes off of this, or duck fat, and that's like just going to add so much flavor. It's essentially cooking the duck breast in its own fat. Okay, so I want to make sure your pan shouldn't be smoking. It shouldn't be off the charts. It should be on a nice, like medium, like if I have a heat up to 10, I'm probably going to say it's around a 3 or a 4 right now. Okay. because we want to cook this nice and slow. If any of you have a thermometer, which again, I want to be able to cook with intuition right now with touch. But if any of you have a thermometer, we want to cook this to about 125 before we rest it, okay? So I'm just going to continue to baste this duck breast as so. Is everybody with me at this point? Everyone's basting, and maybe you can't talk because I'm pulling you away from the stove to check in, but I hope you are. And what I'm going to do is check in on my focaccia here. Let's see what's going on let's see what's happening in my oven here. My focaccia is looking really good actually, and so is my pave. Okay, so I'm seeing some, you know, sizzling happening here. I'm seeing this nice crust happening. I want a little more brown color on the top. So we're just going to leave it in there for maybe another 10 minutes. And we'll go back to our duck breast here. Okay. So all this lovely fat is coming off of it. So I'm tilting my pan, and that's the secret to basting. You tilt the pan and the fat comes towards you, and you use your spoon to, you know, ladle it right over top of it. And if you haven't been able to pull your tender off, it should come off easily right now. Now I'm going to cook duck breast to the chef's choice. And what chef's choice is about a medium rare to medium. You can't, I mean, you could cook a duck breast well done, but it's so dry, and it really does not do it any justice to go that far. So I love this basting method because it's just a time for a chef to look at his product in the pan and kind of meditate on it a bit and enjoy, you know, the transformation of something, you know, a beautiful steak or a beautiful piece of meat like this into something gorgeous. Okay, so again, my water here is unsalted for my gnocchi, but it is boiling, okay, right now. So I just want to be careful of it boiling down too much. I'm just going to top it up with water. Okay, so I just top it up with water, maybe a bit more. Cool. So I'm going to flip over my duck breast right now and show everybody. See how golden brown it is? It happens really easily. But again, it's probably still a little bit rare, so I want to turn it back on its skin and continue to baste. This is an extensive basting process here. And this is such a beautiful product. These ducks come from Quebec. They're a Muscovy duck breast. Muscovy is a little bit of a larger breed of duck. There is several breeds. Duck mallard, which we love and we see. We don't eat the mallards. We eat the Muscovy here. Okay, and they are farmed. They're not wild. So they're on. You know, Quebec has some of the best sort of natural, free range, organic duck farms in the country. You know, I'm not a big fan of foie gras. I know that is a byproduct of the duck industry, but for me, it's not my favorite ingredient. I think it's sort of fallen out of fashion just a touch at this point, but I still do love confit. Duck legs confit is one of my favorites. As you can see, it does take a bit of time here. So don't forget, I'm using my hand. It's a lot of wrist action here because I need to tilt this. I tilt my pan in order to get that fat rolling onto my spoon as I baste. So I am now at the point where, how would I describe this? So have you ever seen this test on your finger for the well done, the medium? So this is well done. If your thumb touches your index finger, okay? This is medium well with your middle. Your ring finger is medium rare, and that is rare. If you touch your pinky to your thumb and you feel that the pressure there, so I want you to touch your index, sorry, your middle finger to your thumb and feel that. That's how this duck breath should feel right now. Okay. I'm going to take it and put it on a plate. No. I'm actually going to take it and put it on a plate. And then I'm going to pull my potato out of the oven, the pave, and I'm going to add it to that tray. And we're just going to finish it in the oven for about 5 minutes.
So I don't cook it on the other side. I don't fry the other side at all.
You don't? No.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to pull this out now. And you can see it got a nice brown crust on it. Okay. Everything's getting nice. And yes, please.
For the duck, do we put it on the plate skin down or the other side down?
I put it on the plate. I put it on the plate skin side up because I want to retain that crispiness.
Perfect. Thanks.
So now because I have a hot, like if I'm putting it on a hot surface, I can put the skin side down. If I'm putting it on a cold surface, I flipped it skin side up. So now I'm on this tray, which is hot and warm, skin side down. I'm going to put this in for 5 minutes, but no more because we'll overcook it that way. Let me look at this focaccia. My focaccia is almost, can you guys see that? I just want a little bit more color on it. So I'm gonna put that in there for another 5 minutes. This is probably
We're just
perfect.
at 17 minutes, Chef.
Okay,
Yes.
see, I didn't know, but I just had that, it just has that look. But thank you for the heads up. So I know this is a lot. I know we have a lot on the go here. We've done the tartare, we've got the duck in the oven, and we still have to make pasta in time for the duck to come out, rest, and then we plate everything together. Okay, so let's see where we're at here. Okay, let's talk a little bit about this seasoning pasta. I think a lot of people, when they're cooking pasta at home, they don't put enough salt in the water. So you may have heard the old, like, if you've seen a cooking show or read a cookbook, chefs will talk about, the pasta water should taste like the ocean. Now, in some circumstances, yes, but that to me is representative of how you would cook green vegetables like asparagus or broccoli. The pasta water should not be so salty as the ocean. It should just be a little bit less. It should almost taste like a perfect faux broth, seasoned, but not overly done. So again, I use my kosher salt for this, and I add what I think is enough, and I taste. We always taste, and we always can add more.
Craig, what do we do with the tendon?
Tender.
What do we? Oh, if you have your pan that you with the duck fat in there, put the tender in there, season it a little bit, and that can be your little snack right now. And just throw it on the stove. That thing will cook in 30 seconds. Let's try that. Okay, I'll put it back on the stove here. Here's my little tender. So a little salt on the tender, and then right back in my pan just for a minute. Okay, so let's taste that salted water. So yeah, again, just like a faux broth. And in the meantime, I want everybody to get the duck jus, because the duck jus needs to go in a small pot, just a small sauce pot. So I have a spoon. I mean, is it going to come out of here? Yeah, it might come out. It's very gelatinous. This is because we buy whole ducks, right? So we buy whole ducks and we roast the bones. We take the legs off. And so normally for service, we would serve leg and breast. Obviously for this application, for this class, we were just serving the breast, but from that same company, we buy full ducks and clean them all off. And we use the carcass to roast and make a duck stock, which is how we got this duck jus. So I don't want to cook this. I just want to warm it because this is literally ready to go. So I'm just going to put it on the back burner here and turn it on really low, super low. Oh, it doesn't want to go on there. Anyways, I'll get it on there at some point. So let's see here. Cook my duck tender a little bit. And we can start to, I actually think we should maybe plate the beef tartare before we do anything. And then it will be easier for us to finish these other dishes here. So I've got my duck tender. Cook that nicely. Again, it's really fast. Duck can be eaten medium. I'm gonna put that on my cutting board right now and pull off my pan again. And I am going to take the same pan that I seared my pave and my cabbage in, and I'm gonna put that on the front here beside my pasta water on a low heat. And that's going to be like a medium to low heat. That's going to be for my brown butter sage sauce. Okay, let's back this up here. Maybe I'm gonna have a little snack with you guys. I've got my duck tender here. You see how quickly that cooked? Really, really fast.
We're just coming up to 22 minutes.
I love these updates. You guys are like my own personal sous chefs here. Thank you. Okay, so let's clear this off a bit. Now we got to think about plating as well. So I'm going to plate one, and you guys, I assume, are cooking for two. So you're going to plate two. So really simple. I just want to take my beef tartare into the middle of my plate. Again, this doesn't need to be super fancy. So I'll show you how this is. I'll show you how I finish this here. Okay, so beef tartare in the middle. And then all I'm going to take is.
We can't see your plate, Craig.
I'm going to move it into the position here, no problem. So again, beef tartare in the middle. I'm just going to take some toasted pine nuts here on top. Okay, and then I'm going to look for that fried rosemary. And I do fried rosemary on top. And then when I get my tartare, when I get my focaccia out, I'm going to slice it. I'm going to put the focaccia right on the plate as a garnish. They're meant to be eaten together. Okay, so really straightforward to finish that, but I just wanted to get that out of the way. So next thing, oh man, has everybody tried their tender? So good. Love it. The one thing we're missing though is a glass of wine. So if you have a partner there, if you have a friend, get them to get you a drink, a cocktail, glass of wine, beer, whatever. Or in my case, I'm gonna drink some water just to stay hydrated, because cooking can be a real workout. So, all right, I'm gonna keep my cutting board here because I need that to slice my duck. So before I do anything, before I get any further, because this pasta won't take very long at all, I'm gonna pull all my stuff out of the oven, okay? And it's going to rest up nicely. So that's perfect. So that's gonna go and rest over here for a brief moment. Okay. And then I'm gonna get my focaccia, and it should be perfectly timed and perfectly ready to go. Look at that. Look at that. Okay, it should feel light. There should be a little bit of oil in the bottom of your container. So when I slice this, when it cools down in a second and then I slice it, I am then going to dump that nice oil right over top of it, that warm, beautiful, warm oil, okay? So now we're going to tackle, and I'll bring this back over here. We are going to tackle the gnocchi. So everybody's pan should be preheated. I'm going to turn it now to I'm going to turn it to medium, okay? And I'm going to put some olive oil in this pan. It should already have a little oil because don't forget, I did my potatoes in there and my cabbage. So I put a touch of olive oil, and I'm going to drop my sage leaves in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 sage leaves right in there. And from there, I'm going to take all the butter that you got. And if you like butter and you have some at home, put a little more butter in. Why not? We went a little conservative on the butter. We don't want to scare anybody, but to be honest, when you go to eat in a restaurant, half the reason it's so delicious is the amount of butter we use. Even in an Italian restaurant, I know a lot of you think, oh, butter is French, but nothing brings a pasta together like butter. So I have this beautiful little turned squash pieces. I'm going to throw that in my pan as well. I'm going to grab my salt, and I'm going to give it a pinch in my pan. So what do I have in here? I have a touch of olive oil I have 8 sage leaves. I have that butter that you got in your kit. I even threw a bit more in for myself because I do love it. And I have my little squash pieces. I love it. Butter makes it better. It does. And I'm going to season it with a little salt. So the goal here is to melt the butter and have the butter brown. It sort of splits and it caramelizes. So before that happens, I should have my pasta in the water. So I've salted this water and I drop my gnocchi into the water. And what I want to do now is get a spoon and stir my water so that it doesn't stick to the bottom, okay? And what did I get to make my life easier? Look, you could strain it off in a colander, but I just have one of these little sieves. And when it comes to the top, I'm going to scoop my gnocchi and then I'm going to drop it in my pan here. So let me see if I can bring this a little closer. Maybe for now we can go handheld. We can go a little handheld here. So this is my browning situation with my sage. I got my couple pieces of squash garnish here. Okay. This feels now, it's got a little more firm quality to it. I can still push it down. The reason I pulled this out is I'm doing what is known as resting the meat, because if I was to take this out of the oven and slice it immediately and put it on the plate, it would bleed everywhere. The juices need to reabsorb before we do any slicing. So pave is hot, cabbage is ready, and duck is just resting nicely. From here, we have our browning situation. And look, I'm already floating. So hopefully you guys have followed along and have the gnocchi in the same position, in the pan, in the pot of water, floating. And I'm going to take it out and get it into my sage. So the butter will split, the butter will bubble, and then just the next step of it is that browning situation. And that brown butter and sage is a classic flavor combination. That winter kind of vibe.
It feels delicious. Can you tell us what to do with the squash puree?
Yes, that's what I add on to the plate. It's just for the end.
Oh, okay. So
okay.
So right now the butter and the squash and the sage leaves are simmering in the pan.
You got it.
Okay.
You guys are good. You're on it with
my
me.
My gnocchi is actually sticking together. So how do I separate it?
You need to go in with a spoon and stir the water around and get it moving vigorously. Then okay. it should come apart. And if it doesn't, then maybe when you put it in the pan, you can go piece by piece with the same spoon. Okay.
Okay.
So it's floating, and that's okay. Mine's been floating for about 1 minute. I'm just going to give it a chance here to brown my butter just a little bit more. And then I'm going to take this. And again, everybody make sure their duck jus is on a low heat. I'm going to take this now into my pan. Okay. So now I'm out of my pasta water and into my pan to get the sauce developing its character and flavor, and everything kind of comes together now. So what do? I'm going to put a touch more salt now that it's come out. I've already put a little bit, just again, maybe you should taste it. I always recommend, okay, let's taste the salt.
Chef, just a question.
Yes. Shoot.
The duck rendering, do we put it in the pan with the brown butter?
The what, sorry?
The duck rendering, or sorry, the duck jus.
No, the duck jus stays in a small sauce pot on its own.
Okay.
So I have my duck jus in here, okay?
Okay.
So now I'm going to grab another spoon and I'm gonna plate my squash puree on, and how do we do this? Okay, so I have my squash puree on my spoon and I just lay it down like a dollop. Then I take the same spoon and I just push it. This is called a spoon push, and it looks like that. It's kind of fancy. And then if I have a little bit left on the edge of my spoon, I just tap it on the corner. I'm just giving you guys a little bit of that like fancy plating technique. So I dollop it on the one end and I do a spoon push to the other end. And you get somewhat of like a resemblance of a sort of a fancy approach to like plating. All right. So again, I've got lots more puree. You can add more at the end, but I just want to keep things a little bit tight and organized for now. So in the meantime, I'm going to start to plate everything over here so you guys can see it. Okay, so I feel like, look, we've got our my pasta's on low with the butter. So really low heat, okay? It's just the butter's absorbing, the butter's browning, it's happening, but just keep that sizzling on a very low heat. So we have our beet tartare. Now that I have my focaccia a little bit cooled, I'm gonna start taking a few slices with a bread knife. I'm gonna take 1 slice, 2 slices, and I'm gonna plate that. I'm gonna put that right on the edge, and then I'm gonna take that, like I said, that olive oil, and I'm gonna drizzle it, oh man, right on the focaccia. So good. The rest I can put in here for later. And then we have our focaccia finished with our beet carpaccio. Now I can start plating the gnocchi. Okay, everybody can see my plate. Maybe I'll back this up a little bit more here. Okay, so I have a nice spoon, and I have my, how do we do this? I grab the gnocchi and the butter in a nice deep spoon, and I just plate it right in the middle of that squash puree. And I get every last little bit of brown butter and sage onto that plate. Don't be shy, please. Tomorrow you can eat light. Today we're gonna eat the butter, all the butter. So that's the beauty of this dish, is that the last thing here is to add a little bit of, let's put grana padano. Okay, so shaved grana padano, and you have beautiful brown butter, sage gnocchi with grana padano. Now, what's next? The duck. So I'm gonna get another plate, and I'm gonna start my duck. So bring this over. Again, get yourself a dish towel because this tray is hot. I don't want anybody getting burnt. And I'm gonna bring this over, and I'm gonna lay down on here. I'm gonna lay down my pave. I'm gonna lay down my Savoy cabbage, and now on my cutting board, it's time to slice my duck. So I have the full duck breast, and I want to take this duck breast. I'm gonna take this into about 10 slices. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, look at that. That is what you're going for. That perfect, like, little pinky, okay? With the basting, the finishing in the oven, and the resting outside, we've achieved a perfect medium seared Muscovy duck breast. So the last thing I want to do to this breast before I plate it is I want to get my salt, that little crunchy Maldon salt, and I want to sprinkle a little bit of Maldon on each of my cut pieces, and then I'm going to lay this on my plate. Okay, so it's a really nice even 3 things: the pave, the cabbage, and the duck. Easy, beautiful, but delicious. From here, I'm going to get another spoon, okay, and I'm going to get my duck shoe, and I'm going to drizzle my duck shoe just on the breast. So what will that do? It warms it up a bit, and the duck shoe has beautiful winter spices, and it complements that so well. I know I made it look easy, and I think with everything kind of being sort of partially done, I hope yours feels as luxurious and well put together as this plate. But we have the beautiful pave, the beautiful seared cabbage, nicely crusted, nicely browned, and that perfectly roasted duck breast. So that's dish number 3. I'm going to talk about the dessert real quickly, but if anybody has any other questions, please fire away, because the last thing to do is plate the dessert and sit down and enjoy a wonderful dinner with your family. So, dessert plate.
I just have one question before dessert.
Absolutely, fire away.
What is like, ours is a little bit redder than yours on one side. Is that okay? Like, we've never cooked duck before, so.
Yeah, I mean, like if you think it's too, If you think it's too rare, here's what I would do. I'd slice it all, I'd fan it out, I'd put it in the oven for about 1 minute, just to warm it a touch more. And then do exactly what, then sauce it, and then put the pave on and just build the plate like I did, but just maybe give it another 1 or 2 minutes in the oven. That's totally fine. It is gonna be hard for everybody to be exactly on the level that I'm on, but I showed you the desired color. If you think it's a little under, by all means, cook it a little further, but the easiest thing to do is to slice it first. Because if you put it in whole without slicing, or if you took one slice off and you thought it was a bit red, just slice the whole thing and then add it back in, because you might overdo it or you might take it too far, but at least if you're visually looking at it, when it's sliced, you'll be able to get something you're comfortable with. Because look, while there is a chef's choice for cooking duck, I'm also okay with people's desire to like take things a little further, but bear in mind, it does get a bit drier. The further you cook it, it will look quite dry. So this beautiful chocolate almond torta, again, I want something really simple here. So this is like almost like a flourless chocolate cake with almond flour, chocolate, butter, and some eggs, really simply put together. So what do we have? Oh, we have the anglaise. So I go into my fridge. I have a little anglaise here, and I have toasted almonds. So I'm just gonna put a little anglaise on mine. I'm not gonna put too much because I want to eat my dinner, and maybe I'll put the anglaise on it after. So I'm just gonna leave that to the side. But the anglaise just goes on top, and then some simple slivered almonds. Again, this dessert is delicious. It's 2 ingredients with a garnish, and it's really straightforward. But to me, I think it complements the simplicity of a meal like this. The way that I cook is sort of not uber fancy. It's sort of sophisticated, but I let the ingredients speak for themselves. And that's kind of our little 4-course dinner here for you guys. I don't have anything else to add. If you have any more questions, feel free to fire away. Go ahead.
Lovely. Could you just go over your plating from the start to finish? So the beets and so how did you, serve them?
Sure. So from start to finish, beets with toasted pine nuts and the rosemary on top with the focaccia on the side as my garnish. The next thing I did was I did my gnocchi with brown butter, sage, squash puree, and the grana padano on top to finish. Okay. From there we have duck with potato pave with sunchokes, cabbage.
You do what you want.
Duck breast with jus.
It looks nice like that.
And then
And
then the next thing we have is chocolate almond torta. And there we have it. A nice Constantine dinner prepared by you guys with some help from our team and walked through by me. I hope you enjoyed this hour-long, feverishly fast cooking experience. And while I enjoy these dinners and things like this virtually, I really can't wait to have you guys back in the restaurant. So thank you for all the support, because even you guys ordering these kits means a lot, and it really helps keep the team engaged and busy, and supports us with getting ourselves back together, back online, and back open. So again, thank you to Toronto Life, and thank you all for being such great chefs here. And like I said, hope to see you again soon. And